Hey guys, I'm Stasi. In this video, I'm going to show you step by step how I crocheted this beautiful, unique granny stitch floral top. I get so many compliments on this top every time I wear it. It's pretty easy to make and very repetitive. There's not a lot of counting involved, so this is the perfect project to work on while watching a movie or your favorite TV show. You can obviously make it with or without the flowers, but I think the flowers just add so much personality to it. Thank you guys so much for clicking on this video. I really truly appreciate it. And I do like to make other crochet tutorials of things that just make me feel happy. So if you like that too, then make sure you subscribe to my channel. For this top, I'm going to be using 100% cotton yarn. I like to use the brand Sugar and Cream because it's just easily at my Joann's store. And then I'm going to use a 5.25 millimeter crochet hook, measuring tape just so that I can make measurements across my body so I know how big to make it. Scissors, a yarn needle, and stitch markers. If you don't have stitch markers, you can easily just use another piece of yarn, bobby pins, safety pin, whatever you have. We're going to start by making the front and the back panels of the top. So here's one of them. Mine measures 23 inches wide. To get the width, I basically just measured from shoulder to shoulder and then added 3.5 inches on each side so that it would drop down over my shoulder a little bit. And then you can make it however long you want it to be on your body. Mine is about 15 inches long, so it's a little bit of a crop, but you can obviously make it more cropped or, full length, whatever you want to do. We're going to start by making a slip knot, so just grab your yarn, twist it around your finger, reach through that hole, and then pull it up. And then go ahead and insert your hook and pull that loop tight. For the granny stitch, you're going to be making your starting chain in multiples of 4. So my chain is going to be 60 chains long. To make a chain, just grab your yarn with your hook and pull it through the loop. For the panels, you're going to be working from the bottom up, so you can basically just put it against your body as you're working to see how long you want your top to be. Your starting chain is going to be the width of the top. As you can see here, I've made 60 chains and that measures about 23 inches. Once you have your starting chain as long as you want it to be, we now need to chain an additional 6. Once you've chained those extra 6, you're going to double crochet into the 6th chain from the hook. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I accidentally went into the 7th, so I counted 7 down from the hook. You can do either, but your stitches work out better if you do the 6th chain from the hook. So just do a double crochet. So yarn over and grab your yarn, go through 2 loops, and then grab your yarn and go through those last 2 loops. I will slow it down on this next one. You're going to do another double crochet in the same chain. And then make 1 more double crochet in that same chain space for a total of 3 double crochets. Next, you're going to chain 1 and then skip 3 spaces. So 1, 2, 3, and then work in that 4th space. You're going to make 3 more double crochets in that same space. After your 3 double crochets, chain 1 and then skip 3 spaces and do 3 double crochets in that 4th space. You're going to repeat this all the way down to the end of the row. And here is what it should be looking like so far. Again, skip 3, work in that 4th chain space and do 3 double crochets and then chain 1. Just keep repeating that pattern and I will meet you down at the end of the row. Now we've made it to the end of the row, and as you can see, I only have 3 chain spaces left instead of 4. That's why I said you should probably make your first double crochet in the 6th chain from the hook instead of the 7th like I did. So I'm just going to skip those 2 spaces and work in the very last one. It's really not going to make a big deal. So in the very last space, just make 1 double crochet. Chain 3 and then turn your work. We're going to be working in that big gap right there. Your chain 3 is going to serve as a double crochet, so you're going to make 2 double crochets in that big space. So with your chain 3, it's going to look like 3 double crochets in that space. Next, chain 1 and then skip over your little cluster of 3 double crochets and work in that next big gap, and you're going to do 3 double crochets in that gap. Chain 1 and then skip over to the next gap and do another 3 double crochets and then chain 1. You're going to repeat this all the way across the row. Here's how your work should be looking at this point. Go ahead and pause the video here because I am going to work the rest of the row off camera and I'll meet you at the end. For the end of row 2, we're going to be working in that very last gap. You're only going to do 2 double crochets to start with. So here's your first one, here's your second, and then for your third double crochet, instead of just crocheting into that gap, you're going to crochet into this chain right here because it's going to make for a cleaner edge. So just stick your hook through that chain space and do a third double crochet. This time we're going to chain 4 before we turn because it is going to count as a double crochet and then a chain 1 since we're going to be skipping over that first little cluster right there. And then just continue the pattern of working 3 double crochets in that gap and then chain 1. Just repeat this all the way across the row. Go ahead and pause it here and finish your row, and then I will meet you at the end of this row. After you've made your chain 1, you're going to do 1 double crochet into the top of that chain 3. So you'll see me stick my hook right in there and then just do 1 double crochet. Struggle bus for a second, but I'll get it. So 1 double crochet and then that is the end of that row. Since we're working right into that gap and we don't have to skip over a cluster, you're only going to chain 3. Again, that counts as a double crochet. So chain 3, turn your work, and then do 2 double crochets into that first gap. Just remember that if you're going to work directly into the gap and not having to skip over a cluster, you only have to chain 3. And then in the next row, when you have to skip over that cluster, chain 4. Hopefully I explained that in a good way, but I think you guys get the picture. So now the pattern just basically repeats itself over and over. So it's just 3 double crochets in each gap and then chain 1. I'm going to go ahead and work the rest off camera until I get the height that I want. I did a total of 20 rows. Once it's as long as I want it, I'm going to do 1 row of single crochet across the top. So chain 1 and then turn your work, and then just work 1 single crochet into each stitch across the top. So I'm going to start in that very first stitch and do a single crochet, and then another single crochet in the next stitch, and just all the way across the top. Make sure you do get a single crochet in that little chain 1 space, so that's right here. And just work all the way until you get to the end, and then you can cut your yarn and fasten off, but leave a long tail so you can use that tail to sew your pieces together. Once you're finished with this first panel, make a second one that is completely identical to this one, and that will be your front and back panels. Go ahead and pause the video here, and I will meet you when you have both your front and back panels. Now that I have both of my panels done, I'm going to line them up with each other. I'm going to have that row of single crochets in the middle, so they are going in opposite directions. You'll see that I'm going to just make sure they're nice and lined up with each other. Once they're lined up, I'm going to start counting in from the outside to sew the shoulders together. So whatever amount you go in on one side, just make sure that it's the same on the other side. And then I'm going to place some stitch markers there, and you'll see that little gap is going to be the part that my head goes through. So you'll see that I just counted 4 clusters in from each side, and then I put my stitch markers there. And then this is the part that we're going to be sewing together. Those are the shoulders. So go ahead and grab your yarn needle, and then you are going to use that long tail that you kept, and go ahead and put your needle on it. And then I'm just going to do a simple little whip stitch to sew those 2 pieces together. So just make sure your pieces are nice and lined up, and then of course start in that corner. And then I'm just going to insert my needle through those 2 single crochets and basically just whip stitch it together until I get to my stitch marker. And then it does help if you kind of pinch your 2 sides together like I did here, so that they're just kind of sticking up, making it nice and easy for you to work through those single crochets. Once you're done sewing that shoulder, just go ahead and weave that end in and then repeat the same thing on the other shoulder. Now we're going to make the sleeves. So it's literally the exact same pattern, same thing, but obviously it's going to be a little bit skinnier in width. Mine is 16 inches wide and then it is 21.5 inches tall. Once I sewed everything together and was able to try it on, I realized my sleeves were way too long, so I ended up taking about 5 rows off by just cuffing them under and sewing them. So really, I just needed them to be about 18 inches long instead of 21. When you're measuring the length of your arm, just don't forget that your shoulder does drop down quite a bit if you add those extra inches on the front and back panels. So I think that's where I went wrong. Go ahead and start with your slip knot. And then to make the sleeves 16 inches wide, I chained a total of 44 chains plus 6. So this right here is a total of 44 chains. Now I'm going to add my 6 on top of that and then double crochet into the 6th chain from the hook. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now do 2 more double crochets in that same space and then chain 1 and repeat the whole pattern that you did for the front and back panels for the sleeves. Skip 3 spaces and then work in the 4th. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. So do another 3 double crochets in there. The only difference with the sleeves is I did not do a row of single crochet at the top of the sleeves. So once you're done with your last row of your little granny stitch, you can just cut the yarn and leave it at that. But I'm going to go ahead and make my 2 sleeves off camera and I will meet you once those are done. So go ahead and pause the video and I'll meet you when your sleeves are done. Now you're going to line your sleeves up with the front and the back panels and then we're going to sew them together right along this little edge here. As you can see, I've placed my stitch markers to help me sew them together. So find the very center of your sleeve by counting and then make sure that center is lined up with the center of your shoulder here. So I just placed a stitch marker there. And then on the edges, I just counted up to make sure that I had an even number of rows on each side basically, and then I just put those 2 stitch markers there. By doing this, you'll just make sure that nothing is lopsided and everything is nice and even before you start sewing them together. I just sewed them together with that same little whip stitch that I did for the shoulders, and I left a long tail when I finished the arms so that I could use that tail to sew them together. On the first and the last stitch, I like to put my needle back through that little hole so that it just creates a small little knot. And then again, I'm just going to kind of pinch those edges up so that it makes it nice and easy for me to work through. I do apologize for the lack of focus here with my camera. It was focusing more on my hand than the yarn, so sorry about that. Once you're finished sewing one sleeve, just go ahead and sew the other sleeve, and then you can weave those ends in. Once you get to this point, do not fold it over and continue to sew it the rest of the way up. It's going to be way easier to sew your flowers on if you leave it like this before sewing it all together. Next, we're going to go ahead and make the flowers. I made a total of 12 of them. Start by making a slip knot. And chain 36. Double crochet into the third chain from the hook. So there's 1, 2, 3. Go ahead and double crochet into that space right there. And then chain 3. Now you're going to do another double crochet into that same space that you did the first one. Chain 1, and then skip the next 2 spaces and double crochet into that third space. Chain 3, and then double crochet into that same space again. Chain 1. So you are now creating these little V shapes. Skip 2 spaces and double crochet into that third space. Chain 3 and double crochet into that same space. You're just going to repeat this all the way across the chain. So chain 1, skip 2 spaces, double crochet into the third, and just keep repeating that same process all the way across so you get all these little V shapes. Go ahead and pause it here and work the rest of your row, and I will meet you at the end of the row. Once we're at the end of the row and there's only a couple of chains left, you're going to double crochet into the very last chain, chain 3, and then double crochet into that last chain space again. Now we're going to chain 3 and then turn our work. Now we're going to be making the petals by doing double crochets into those V shapes. That chain 3 that you just made does count as one double crochet. So in that first V shape, you're going to do a total of 6 double crochets, and it would be 7 including that chain 3 space. So here you can just see me making a total of 6 double crochets in that V space. And now you're going to make a single crochet into that little smaller little square space. I think that's where we made our chain 1. So just do a single crochet in there, and then in the next V space right here, make a total of 7 double crochets. Now do another single crochet in that little chain 1 space. And then in that next V space, do 7 double crochets. This is going to be the pattern that you repeat all the way across. So each V shape will have 7 double crochets, and then remember to do a single crochet in the little chain 1 space. I'm going to work the rest of my row off camera, so go ahead and pause it here, finish your row, and I'll meet you at the end. Once you've worked 7 double crochets into that very last V space, you're going to see this little space right here. Just make your last single crochet in there, and then you can leave a long tail, cut your yarn, and fasten off. Take your long tail and attach your yarn needle. Now grab the opposite end of the long tail, and you're basically just going to start rolling the flower up until it looks like a flower. Once I have it started a little bit, I like to put my thumb in the center of the flower and just kind of roll it like this. And now you're just going to take that needle and just start securing the flower. So go in with the needle directly at the end of the roll, and then just kind of sew it however you think is best. I like to go directly through the center so I can get all of those layers just like this. And then I'll start working up through the petals to make sure that everything is nice and secure. So I'm just going to go through all of the petals in a circle. I like to focus on the 2 bottom petals so that I make sure that those are not all loose. But it is still important to make sure that you're working through all of the petals so that everything is nice and secure. Once you have your flower all secure, just work that needle back to the center of the bottom of the flower. And then with the other end, just make sure you tie a knot with those two ends to make it secure. Do not cut your ends yet after you tie your knot. Now you're going to lay all your flowers out on your shirt wherever you want them to be. Then you can take those two ends and put them on the other side of the top. So make sure that there is like a stitch in between them, and then you're just going to tie them together like this. You can see on the green flower how I'm going to poke them through. So just do this with all of your flowers and make sure they're all tied onto the shirt. Now you can flip the entire thing over, and using those long ends, you're going to grab your yarn needle and just fully sew those flowers on. Once I've gone all the way around the flower with my needle, I'm going to make one more knot with those two ends, and then you can go ahead and weave those ends in. Once you have all of your flowers sewn on, then you can flip your work in half, and you'll see that now it looks like a top. So all that's left to do is just sew the sleeves and the two bottom parts. So you're just going to sew right along these two edges, and then the top is done. And here is our finished top. I think it's so cute. I really hope you guys enjoyed making this project. Thank you again so much for watching my video. Don't forget to subscribe, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Bye.